What's up, guys? Welcome back to Dream a Little, the podcast that's all about helping you feel confident about your ABDL side. I'm your host, Lo. Thank you so much for listening. Our guest today is a little bit different because he's not here to share how he met someone and told them about ABDL. Doug's going to be diving into his experience with meeting other ABDLs online and growing that relationship to the point where you're comfortable enough to meet up with them in person. I remember the first time I met another ABDL in real life, and it was honestly a surreal experience. Before I actually took the plunge and met up with someone, I had planned on meeting up with people before, but bailed on the plans because I was just so nervous. So today we're going to be talking about red flags to look for when you're meeting someone, precautions you should take to vet people, and best practices to avoid scaring people off. If you want to learn more about Doug, you can find links to his social media in the show notes of this episode at thelittlelounge.com/170. That's thelittlelounge.com/170. On that same page, you'll also find a link to my latest Nurturing Mommy roleplay. I post a new episode every Monday, one for females and one for males, so everyone's included. Speaking of that, I wanted to give a special shout out to some new subscribers. Big thank you to Littlest Naya, Tim, Clara, Dale, and Wes. I think we're at 700 plus subscribers at this point, which is so crazy. I appreciate all of you guys so much. Again, the link to the roleplay is going to be at thelittlelounge.com/170. And that's it. I think that's all I had to say. All right, I won't make you wait any longer. Let's get started. What's up, Doug? How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well. It's nice to have you here on the show.
Yeah, great to be here.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you identify as within the ABDL community?
Well, I'm 26, live in the Midwest, and as far as what I identify as, I identify myself as a daddy as of more so lately than I have in the past.
Okay, so you kind of have switchy tendencies then, but you've kind of been more identifying as a caregiver lately?
Correct. Yeah, over the last couple of years, I've sort of transitioned more out of a little role and more so into a caregiver daddy type role.
You know, I get asked this question a lot, so I'm curious to know if you have an answer for this. But everyone wants to know, because I'm in the similar boat, right? If there was anything that made you kind of want to transition more into the caregiver role.
I think it more had to do with my personality. I kind of tend to have a personality where when I'm with friends or I'm with other people, I usually have fun when the people I'm with are having fun and are enjoying themselves. So I naturally kind of have sort of like a pleaser mentality. And I like making sure that everybody I'm with is having a good time. So I guess it kind of sort of fits into like the nurturing role of sort of like a caregiver, to making sure that if you have a little, that they're taken care of and that they get the satisfaction of that relationship dynamic.
That's great. Okay, so it sounds like you kind of enjoy facilitating the activities and, planning a little bit. I mean, that's part of being a caregiver, right? Is just taking control of the situation and leading the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I get a lot of joy out of something when I do something, when it brings a smile to someone else's face. So it very much fits that role. It's
hard to describe, like I get asked that question a lot too. Like, what's your favorite part about being a caregiver? Would you say you have a favorite part?
Sort of like the reciprocation end when I've done something and like a little acknowledges it and then kind of reflects that back onto me with either some sort of affection in a small way or just small gestures. I'm not a person who takes a lot to be happy. So even the smallest gestures of happiness or smiles or like a hug or something like that makes me feel better inside. So just small gestures and stuff like that kind of are my favorite part about being a caregiver, really.
Yeah, there's joy in bringing other joy to people, That's great. So how old were you when you realized that you were into this?
Oof, that's kind of a difficult question because early on in my life, I was actually like a bedwetter up until I was like in 7th grade. So I had constantly been wearing them for personal use for medical reasons up till then. But then there was like a period of time a couple years later, as curious teenagers do, they stumble around on the internet and they find things that they aren't necessarily, supposed to find, but they accidentally do. And then I came across some ABDL content online. I can't remember where it was. I think the website originally at the time was Daily Diapers, I think. I'd stumbled across their website, and I think they still exist. But I'd sort of stumbled on there and gotten curious about it because I wore so long as a kid growing up because of my medical problem. And then when I outgrew that and then stumbled across it later, there was sort of this thing in the back of my head that really kind of, I don't know, triggered, and I was able to kind of slowly explore and get back into it. And then it kind of led me down the path of figuring out, why I'm necessarily looking at this type of stuff, why I'm attracted to this type of thing. And then it sort of just kind of went downhill from there.
Was it hard to accept at first?
I assume it always is for everyone that is that young, because you live with family, and it's sort of one of those things that like everyone always sees it. Oh, diapers, yeah, there's something that little kids wear, or like when you get older, when you're in like late elementary school, middle school, or whatever, it's something that you could possibly get like teased about or something like that and get made fun of, and it can kind of be kind of a touchy subject for kids as they grow up. So it's like, I guess it can be kind of difficult to accept being into that type of thing and kind of revisiting that portion of a person's life in some ways.
Yeah. There's so much taboo around it, and that can cause a lot of shame because you're like, inside you're like, I'm not supposed to like this. So
Right.
Maybe there's something that's off about me, or like I'm damaged or I'm broken in some way, and like there's this glitch, and I'm liking this thing that I'm not supposed to like, and it's difficult to understand. And not only that, but then it's like, well, then how do I ever get to experience this in real life? Like,
right. I mean, when you're a teenager and you browse online and you're on like websites like Pornhub or other stuff like that, like there's like the standard like porn categories that every person is aware of and, is used to watching. But then when you talk about things like kink, and then you get into like stuff like ABDL, like, okay, when I was on that website, like nobody ever said that there were diapers involved. No one ever said that there was like this role play involved. No one ever said that there were all these extra things in there that, nobody, like, I guess you could say normal people, don't associate with what they consider porn or what they consider like kink or attractions that the average person would.
yeah, it's definitely out there. And so that brings up another challenge, which is, talking to people about it. Have you ever opened up to someone about ABDL?
I guess it really depends. What do you mean by opening up?
To someone who is like vanilla, like trying to explain to them.
I feel like I have at one point. I wouldn't remember who it is. It might have been someone in a past relationship that was also kind of into some kink stuff. And I don't remember exactly how it went. It's been so long now. It's been several years.
Well, it just goes to show you, sometimes you're super stressed about having a conversation and it seems like a huge deal at the time. And then, like years later, it doesn't even matter anymore. But at the time, it feels so important, right?
Right. Yeah. So I don't know. Sometimes some people feel the need that they have to tell somebody. Sometimes, people are okay with not telling somebody. And sometimes people really don't tell or talk to anybody until they're inside and talking to somebody within that community that they've been kind of lurking around in forever.
Is that the approach that you take?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I really, unless I had some sort of really big indicator that someone that I knew in my own personal life was into something like this, I probably wouldn't bring it up with them. Just kind of like have one of those awkward conversations like, hey, by the way, I'm into taking care of like little girls that wear diapers and stuff and change them, and be like, and then have like maybe accidentally like misjudge what they're actually into and be like, oh, wow, okay, that's not where I was going to go with this conversation, but sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what would be a good indicator, of that in the first place. It's like, what could someone possibly say that you'd be like, oh, maybe they're into this? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I've definitely had those random moments where, like, sometimes, like, I mean, this probably only happens to people that are like in the ABDL community. Well, they will have conversations with somebody, and then just randomly they'll make like a joke or something like that, and be like, "Haha, like you're such a baby. You probably wear like diapers or something like that," and you're like, "Ha ha ha ha! Jokes on you, my friend."
You're like, but would you be down with that, or
Right, right, right.
you don't know how
So
right you are.
I
So
know.
in real life, does anyone know about your ABDL side?
Mostly just people that I've met through the community.
Okay, cool. So how are you meeting these people?
I've met people over the years through a variety of different avenues. I've met people in the past when Craigslist used to have like personal ads and stuff, which they don't anymore. I have met like one person through like Daily Diapers a long time ago when they had their message boards. I've met people through FetLife mainly, and then some through Reddit, actually.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, do you notice a difference in the type of people on each different platform, or is everyone kind of on the same level? I don't know how to word that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's really hard because I think that by and large the community is the same everywhere. There's the same types of people that have the same personalities all over. It's just a matter of, how they go about having their own interaction with the community, or how they themselves have gotten into the community. Like I've met one person who had no idea what FetLife was, and this was somebody I'd met on, I think, Craigslist at the time. They were just on Craigslist, looking for someone that was into ABDL or adult diapers or whatever, and they had no idea FetLife existed, or they had no idea that subreddits on Reddit existed for this. And
I
I
didn't
think,
I didn't necessarily know there were subreddits for this either, to be honest.
oh, even till now.
Oh wow, okay.
Oh yes, yes. There is very much an ABDL subreddit. If you've never actually been on there and browsed it, there's actually a fairly thriving community on there.
For meeting up with people too, like kind of like a
Yeah,
personal ad in that kind of sense.
yeah. They have there's a subreddit for ABDL personals where you can post, what your age is, what gender you are, what you're looking for. Like if you're looking for someone who's a male or any gender or whatever, and you can connect with people on Reddit and just message each other through there, just like you would probably like on any of the groups on FetLife that people go through.
That's really interesting. I mean, it seems a little bit scary to put yourself out like that, especially meeting up with someone who is local with you. So, can we talk about that? Like, how did that go?
Gosh, I think the first time I actually met with somebody in the community, there was this. Actually, she is a person in a local, runs one of the bigger local groups here in my state, and she's a very nice individual. I think, met her first I think on FetLife. I think on FetLife at the time. I'd never really met with anybody prior to that, as far as like really engaging. I had like there was a actually I met a guy on Craigslist that I used to buy diapers from.
He was like your diaper dealer.
Oh yeah, he was a really nice guy. But I never really had like any interactions like outside of just buying ABDL diapers from him. He was a guy that lived kind of in the area, and he worked for like a medical express company, and he was interested in opening up his own medical company because he was a mechanic. He worked on cars and stuff, worked on a lot of really nice high end cars actually for some fairly wealthy people. But he was also coincidentally, into diapers through his own medical need, but was also within the ABDL community. So he would just buy a large amount of, like, I think at the time it was bambinos, because that was like the bigger one at the time. He'd
Hmm.
just buy a bunch of bambino diapers, then put them up on Craigslist and sell them that way.
So, even though you were meeting up like strictly as a transactional kind of experience here, were you still nervous because this guy knew what you were buying?
Kind of, but at the same time, like I got over it very quickly because I realized I was like, okay, this guy obviously knows what the people who are buying these are into, and he's also into it himself. I mean, it seems sketchy, but I would meet this guy in a Burger King parking lot, like 15 minutes from where I lived, to buy diapers out of the trunk of his little Nissan Cube.
Okay.
It sounds outrageous. I
It's
know it
kind
does.
of hysterical.
But
You want to buy some
was like,
diapers?
God, how old was I at the time? I was probably like 16 or 18, like somewhere in there, 16 to 18.
Okay.
When I really first like started really getting into like actual like ABDL like diapers themselves. I had gone and purchased like obviously store bought stuff myself prior to. I would like you could like bike to Walgreens and stuff and just buy them. But
It's
other
not the
than
same
that,
quality, right? And
no,
when you live
absolutely.
with your parents, sometimes you have to get resourceful.
Oh yeah, you have little mini stashes all over the house of just like ABDL stuff. You're like, all right, I'm just gonna open up this random unused suitcase in the basement that no one uses because we haven't gone on vacation in like 6 years, and just hide everything in there. And then when the parents are gone, just like it's a whole. It's you. I am not surprised the lengths that people go to like hide this stuff from family, and I totally understand it.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably got to be one of the worst feelings is getting your stash discovered by your parents or someone in your family. That's got to be. I wouldn't
It
even have the balls to bring a diaper into my parents' house when I was living there when I was young. Like, I just would not even risk it. Not worth it.
Yeah, and there were some times where like I had stashed stuff away in certain spots as a kid, and I was fairly confident that like a couple times, like, because my parents are like they're nosy, and sometimes my mom she just likes to dig through stuff, and I'm fairly certain that a few times she found a few things that like after I noticed, like you're just like sweating profusely, like oh my god,
Like
my
something was
parents found. Oh,
moved. Something was
yeah,
moved.
oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
But they didn't say anything.
No, nothing was ever said to me, but like
It's an
and
unspoken
I think
thing.
one time one thing went like I think like a pack, like I think it was either like a pack of like pull-ups or like whatever. Something went missing one time, and I never found it, and like I was just like freaking out for like an entire week, just
Did
like
you think like they were gonna have an intervention with you or something or bring it up potentially?
oh yeah. Oh yeah. But like at the same time, at least like for me, it was kind of like legitimate cuz like when I was younger, when I was like 14 or whatever, 15, like I had just gotten out of my, out of my bedwetting condition that I had up till like 7th grade. So I still wore at night up until a fairly late age. So at least like, if they found something, it could be sort of passed off as, oh, these were just what we had laying around from back in those days, or it wouldn't seem as weird for
Yeah,
me.
especially if it's a pull up. If it's a bambino, I mean, that's a little bit harder to explain.
Yeah, yeah. That wouldn't have flew at least in our house.
Yeah, probably
That
not.
would have been an immediate discussion.
Oh man. Okay, so are there any precautions that you take before you meet up with someone in real life?
I generally try to meet with somebody casually in a public place first. Usually ask, if they want to go grab lunch, if they want to go grab a coffee, somewhere where, it's not in their personal space, it's not in my own personal space, but it's in a quiet spot away from everything where you can talk about, like, if they're not comfortable talking about that kind of stuff in public, they'll talk about normal things about their life, you know.
Which is
So
good.
you get,
Yeah.
yeah, which is good because one of my biggest like pet peeves sometimes in the community is like you'll meet somebody new online and they'll immediately just jump into like everything kink. They're like, oh, you wear diapers, do you do this, do you what? I'm just like, okay, we need to back it up, we need to slow down just a little bit here. I've known you for like 10 seconds.
Right. I feel violated.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like we can get to that, like give me at least like 15 minutes to warm up to you before I start answering these questions, but we just gotta dial it back here for a minute.
Yeah, because I mean, what are the odds that someone would just come up to you after meeting you for the first time and say any of those things in a public space, especially like nothing. Like no one would ever say that. Like
Right.
it's yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, some people are so eager. I get it. Like you want to talk to somebody who likes it, but that's not all we are, right? It's not just ABDL all the time and diapers all the time. We have interests and hobbies outside of kink, and that's how you get to know people and actually make friends in this community.
Right, yeah. And it's one of those things where, some people do live it as a lifestyle, as a very, very regular thing. But there are people who, they live that regular life. They go to work, they have that professional job, they come home, and then after a little while, then they dive in and indulge in their lifestyle.
Absolutely. So those meetings went well, the public ones?
Most of them do. Some, like, I'm very picky sometimes about the people that I choose to personally meet up with. I kind of tend to do a bit of screening through either like their profiles or anything else prior to meeting them, or I'll gauge someone based on the type of conversation they try to engage in with me. There's sort of like a classification or group of people, at least in my local community, that I've deemed the normies. And those are like the people that I can, it sounds bad, but I mean, like, they're like the people that I've met within the community that I can talk to and have a regular conversation like you and I are having right now.
Right.
And we don't necessarily have to talk about anything specifically related to ABDL. And whenever we do talk about things ABDL related, they don't necessarily get very personal very quickly.
Right. It is a private thing. I mean, the things that we do, right? I mean,
some people aren't very private about it. Some people are not.
Yeah.
But there's some debate or conversation to be had about some of that to some degree in the community. I know some people are very much in the boat of, nope, you keep this behind a closed door and no one else outside of the kink community sees it. And some people are like, well, this is me, and other people, regardless of whether they're in it or not, are just gonna have to deal with it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's both levels. I feel like a lot of people do fall somewhere in the middle where, maybe they're willing to talk about it on a podcast with me, like right now, but not necessarily, be posting videos with your face in it, in a diaper and stuff like that. Like there's different levels of comfort depending on who you are. So there you have it, guys. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Stay tuned until next week to hear part 2. Bye for now.